Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, and welcome to... What day of the week is it, people?
It's a Tuesday. Is it Tuesday or Wednesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
What's happening? No,
Okay.
Tuesday, and what's our number episode today, Mara?
339.
339 episodes. The day after the birthday. It was a good birthday.
You got birthday hangover today?
I went for a hike, a super duper hike, put spikes on my shoes and hiked to the top of this mountain near us. It's beautiful. Me and my wife went on a special hike date.
No, look at that.
It was great. You know how I always brag about waking up to spiritual dreams?
Yes.
And I'm always like, oh yeah, me and Krishna were dancing, stuff like that. So this morning, I woke up and someone was telling me that their child was watching The Exorcist. And I was like, The Exorcist, you shouldn't watch. I woke up with the picture, that famous picture of The Exorcist in my face. That's how I woke up. And then the alarm went off and I was like, no, I'm not waking up to this picture. Hit snooze, went back down to get a new face in my head to start my day.
Okay.
I'm just telling you that. Why is that image still in my mind? It's been like 40 years.
I'm not sure what the image is. Is it someone's head spinning around or
That's like
something?
that scary face.
Well,
You know what I'm talking about, Mara?
we
That scary
brought it in,
exorcist
right?
face.
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about. It is
Yeah, why is
scary.
You know what? The things that we put in our consciousness, you got to be careful. I'm looking at your apartment right now. I see
Yeah.
these pictures of Krishna and Radha.
Picture of
These are
Krishna,
the
yeah.
images we want in our face on a regular basis. I know what it's from. It's from some hardcore single. A lot of you hardcore people know what it is. The
Oh,
Negative
are you
Approach
talking about
single the Negative Approach single
Negative
has
Approach?
that picture.
Yeah.
And I must have meditated on that record thousands of times.
It was a classic.
Because of that. It's a classic record, but it's now internalized, deeply embedded in my subconscious.
Well, it was a negative approach. Now you're reaping the negative results.
You got to be careful what you put in your mind.
Yeah.
It's there. It doesn't go away. It takes a long time to get away. It takes a moment to go in, isn't it?
Yep.
Bad habits take a moment, but they stay and they hang out and they almost like spawn, right? Careful
They
what
spawn.
you put in. They give birth to other thoughts and they replay in the future. They
do.
give you ideas. Hey, that wasn't so bad, was it?
But should that be used as an excuse to just go back to sleep? Is that the answer?
Was that the? Well, no. I was probably a little lazy.
Okay.
Probably a little lazy in there. But you know what? Maybe it was. Maybe it was a reasonable excuse. By the way, Kaustubha, before we go anywhere,
Yeah.
I've got some special requests about people want to hear about. We ended the show with, you shouldn't gamble. It's one of the regulative principles.
I was going to do research on that. Let's do it tomorrow because I want to. I want to do a little research on that.
Okay. All right, we got some sweet stuff today, and I had a very prolonged introduction. So let's dive into the sweet nectar pot of the Srimad Bhagavatam.
All right.
Starting with our secret mantras. Okay. Narayanam namaskritya Naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee. All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmadatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual masters who have opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance, with the ointment of knowledge. Rub the ointment of knowledge all over myself this morning.
There you go.
Mm-mm.
All right, we ready?
Yeah, so we are in Canto 3, first chapter.
Yeah.
And we made it only to text 8 yesterday, I think.
That's right.
Is that it?
Yeah, we read text 8. You know, we're hearing about Vidura. Getting a little background on him. It's kind of brief, but it's great stuff. And but we're also hearing about him in contrast with his brother, Dhritarashtra. Let's just call him the blind king, right? Because I think it's easier for people
to remember. Because his son also has a weird, long, 3-syllable name.
3 syllables.
4-syllable. It's like 2 D names with 4 syllables.
Yeah.
And if you're new to the name thing, it's very confusing.
So we'll just say the blind king.
The blind king.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
now here's an interesting thing, Kaustubha.
Yeah.
Vidura's father.
Yeah.
Is the author of the Bhagavatam.
That's right.
It's sort of cool, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a cool thing.
Very cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of a lot of familial connections going on here.
Okay. Please share.
So of course, what we're going to see a bit in this section is a contrast between between Vidura and the blind king, his brother, right? And the blind king, had the opulence and the power. Vidura had the wisdom, right? And the purity of heart, the purity of mind. And so we're going to hear about how although he gives good advice to the blind king, how to deal with his very evil son Duryodhana. That advice is it's not appreciated. It's not followed by the blind king. It's seen as an attack by Duryodhana, the blind king's son. And Vidura is banished, and Vidura leaves, but the mood in which he leaves is important. But what we read yesterday is what we heard about the blind king and how he was just he didn't stand up and do the right thing, right? He didn't live the Dharma. And there are 3 examples given of when he didn't stand up and do the right thing. One was when his evil son Duryodhana he built the house of lac as a apparent gift, to the Pandavas, but it was really just all a plot to kill them all in a fire.
Yeah.
He didn't stand up and say, "No, you can't do this. This is wrong." He really should have at that point, right?
Yeah, that was bad. Okay. Building a flammable Airbnb
for your cousins.
And then lighting it on fire. That's not a good thing.
Not good. The second thing was he just stood there. He didn't say anything. He didn't do anything when, again, Duryodhana told his younger brother Dushasana, "Go grab Draupadi, drag her by the hair into this public arena. Let's try to strip her naked." Basically assaulted Draupadi publicly. He should have said something. He should have stopped it. He didn't do anything.
Let that happen.
Right. And then the third thing mentioned was that after the Pandavas were banished unfairly, exiled to the forest, 13 years later they came back. At that point, he should have returned the kingdom to them, at least half of it.
13 years. 13 years they lived in the forest, and then give us our kingdom back. Nah, we changed our mind. Can't do that.
And he should have stood up. And in all of these cases, he was weak. right? He didn't stand up and do the dharmic thing, and the results of that, come back to you. And so, it's important that we hear that. Now, where we pick up today on text 9, really interesting stuff here. All this stuff throws us back. Maybe we'll read a little Mahabharata today, right?
Yeah. Please.
Because my God, when I read that stuff, I tell you, I got all caught up. I got to the show a little late this morning because you just get caught up in it. It's like it just brings tears to your eyes. This stuff, makes your hair stand on end. Some of this stuff.
I cry when I read the Mahabharata. That's
Yeah.
why it's never good to read small, abbreviated versions of the Mahabharata, because you can't fully embrace the characters.
Oh, the
You
characters,
got to
the
read
details.
the bigger versions, the better. And I tell you, you get sucked into it and you cry. You cry, you laugh.
The
Brings out
hair
all the
stands on end, right? You get the chills
Yeah,
sometimes.
brings awkward moments, cringe moments.
Yeah. So let's read text 9.
Text 9. Lord Krishna was sent by Arjuna into the assembly as the spiritual master of the entire world. And although his words were heard by some, like Grandfather Bhishma, as pure nectar, it was not so for the others, who were completely bereft of the last farthing of past pious works.
A farthing.
I love that word, farthing. I won't give you a farthing. The blind king did not take the words of Lord Krishna very seriously.
Right.
It's one of those things, when you're covered by, licentious motives, greed, anger, Krishna can be standing right in front of you, and you're just like, who are you?
Yeah.
God's in front of everybody at every moment, and we have this.
Yeah, we're dull
And
to
you
it.
can't see. Yeah, we just can't see.
Now, could you describe the scene? It says Lord Krishna was sent by Arjuna to the assembly as the spiritual master of the whole world. What assembly are we talking about here?
This is when they're asking for 5 villages, right?
That's right. They've come out of their 13 years of exile.
They want half the kingdom, and then they say, no, we're not going to give you half the kingdom. Or no, we're not going to give you the kingdom back. They said, how about half the kingdom? No, I'm not going to give you half the kingdom.
How about a village? 5 villages.
Yeah, so they're all, the Pandavas are like, what are we supposed to do here? These guys are trying to cheat us out of the entire empire. It's our kingdom. And he says, you know what? Yudhishthir's like, let's just play it cool. We're all kings, therefore we need villages to lead. That's part of our dharma. Give them the entire empire. We'll take the 5 villages. So they sent Krishna as an envoy to explain this to them.
He was going to Krishna went on a peace mission. He was like the diplomat, right?
The peacemaker.
He was going to try to avoid the war that was the Battle of Kurukshetra.
Like, this is worthy of a massive war, and they didn't want to go to war. They realized so many hardships come from war, broken families, people are dead, innocent people are hurt. It destroys the family. Yeah. So Yudhishthira was talking them out of war. Krishna went to make peace and say, look, just give these guys 5 villages. They'll be happy. Keep everything else. It's a very, very noble move on their part. And Duryodhana's reply was, I won't give you enough land to drive a pin through. Ooh.
Yeah. So Krishna goes there on this peace mission. And but one thing that's really interesting, so Krishna speaks in that assembly. And it describes here that although his words were heard by some, like Bhishma. Now, who's Bhishma?
Bhishma's he's the son of Vyas, the eldest son. He's the grandfather, the grandsire of the entire family. He's the most respected. He's a Mahajan. He's the son of Mother Ganga. He's
super
like
powerful warrior, but he's like the elder statesman.
Yeah, elder statesman, but respected, loved. He was trained in military arts in the heavens.
Mm-hmm.
In the heavens. So he's not an ordinary being. He's like a godlike man.
He's the most respectable figure you can get.
And so, and of course,
Mahajan.
with all this power and, he's very impressive. He worships Krishna. He loves Krishna. It's his ista, his meditation is on Krishna. So people like Bhishma hear Krishna speaking, they're like, oh my God, Krishna is incredible. He's coming forward. What an incredible compromise on their part. I'm sure Krishna was behind this. all accolades to him. And then all of a sudden, the same words are falling on this person who's envious and cruel-hearted, and they're thinking, what do you think? People that are greedy. It's one of those things. To the degree that you refine your spiritual ears, your spiritual lenses, you see spirit everywhere. And to the degree that you feel like, everybody's out to get me, the world is unfair, I've been cheated again, why me? Then you feel like, the world is out to get me.
Yeah.
And you hear it with that type of framework.
Yes, it's such a nice point, and even like taking it like into the deeper spiritual level, or when it comes to like say our spiritual practice, a point is made here. You had two people. You had Bhishma, and then you have the blind king, and it's said that the blind king, he was completely bereft of the last farthing of past pious works. It means his good karma was gone. Right.
Good karma bank account was over.
And the result of that was he ceased to be attracted to good, right? That's like that when our bank account is empty, or you can flip it the other way. When we don't feel a strong attraction for spiritual content, and we find ourselves drawn to mundane things to try to find our happiness or our entertainment, that means we're lacking in that spiritual credit. It has to do with our lifestyle, right? Yeah. So our desires or our taste for spiritual content, it's connected to our lifestyle, how we live, how we treat people. And therefore, spiritual practice isn't just about like sitting alone and meditating or, chanting your mantra. All of that has to be accompanied with the right lifestyle, the right behavior, the right treatment of other people. Otherwise, you lose taste for it. And Bhishma had that taste. When Krishna was speaking, he's like, this is Krishna. Every word is like nectar. And for Dhritarashtra, he's full of material attachments. He has no longer any, it says piety or piousness, but we can understand that as like the good karma, to have attraction for that which is good, or the attraction for that which is spiritual. He's got, for him, because his attachments are so much, he's like, I don't want to hear this message. Right? This message is like going against my desires. He's telling me I've got to correct my son who I'm so attached to. I prefer not to go there. Hearing this is problematic for me. Bhishma's hearing it. He's got no material attachments. He's dedicated to always doing what's good. And he can hear that same message and it's like nectar.
Yeah.
Okay. Something you want to say?
I was just thinking about like the attraction to hearing. The attraction to hearing is so it can be easily taken for granted. And I was just thinking about everybody on Wisdom of the Sages. A lot of people, like, they're not sporadic listeners. They listen regularly. It's like it's quite impressive. And it's really easy after doing it a while. You just sort of take it for granted. Like, well, I'm doing this. Well, I need a break from this. It's so easy in a moment to say, I need a break from this.
Yeah.
And because you don't realize how the Bhagavatam, like, it just starts to lift you up because it happens very subtly. And in a moment, we can go from spiritual consciousness to material consciousness. I know I'm speaking from firsthand experience. And you could take like a hairpin turn, and like it just takes one of the roaming senses to want something mundane, and then you're dragged back down this slippery slope of material existence.
And you start to cultivate it without even knowing it.
And you start to cultivate it with that. That's exactly well put. So the Bhagavatam, and even just listening to the show on a regular basis, sometimes you might not even get like, oh, that wasn't as good as yesterday's or something like that. But it's the hearing of it on a regular basis that chips away at the material attachments in the heart. And it's that desire to hear that really saves our life.
Yeah. Now, so again, there's an idea here that because Bhishma was straightforward, because Bhishma, being dharmic, right, means I'm a straightforward person. I'm not two-faced, right? I'm capable of saying, doing the right thing here may not be pleasant, but I'm going to do it because it's the right thing. That was Bhishma, to the core, right? And that wasn't the blind king to the core. The blind king he didn't have that strength of character, that strength of conviction to do right. Therefore, he was crooked. He became crooked in his dealings. And on the material level, when we become a little crooked, a little two-faced, a little dishonest, a little, it destroys the quality of our life, right? And what to speak of spiritually, when we approach spirituality with ulterior motives, with somewhat impure motives, right? Okay, I want to pray to God. I want to go to church. I want to do this. But I have my motive isn't just to connect with God purely, to develop love for God and love for all living beings purely. My motive is different. I have a different. So I'm sitting there looking pious, dressing pious, acting pious, being in the pious place and all that. But I actually have a different motive.
Right.
Right. Bhakti means we want to purify that motive, right? It's a practice of yoga where we're trying to purify that motive. Now, why don't we dip into little Mahabharata, and we can read. We're going to read about that time that is just prior to this assembly that we heard about here, where in Hastinapur, which is the capital, the blind king, his advisors, like Bhishma and Vidura and others, as well as Duryodhana, the evil son of the blind king, they're all hearing that Krishna is going to come on this peace mission. They know he's coming. And, the blind king's going to begin to say, hey, we should greet him and show him all respect, right? We should give him gifts. We should do this, do that. And then you hear Vidura's response. The wisdom of Vidura is so great here. Want to read?
How Sinapur prepares herself. You want to read there?
Yeah.
All right. I just sat on my glasses, by the way. Lost them all.
Oh, you did it. There you go.
It's like, I got to buy them by the 6-pack. Okay.
This is really, I love this stuff. This is the Kamala Subramaniam.
Yeah, this is our old favorite Mahabharata before we got into Krishna Dharmas. It's Kamala Subramaniam. So this thing's been published for years. Dhritarashtra heard from his spies that Krishna was on his way.
So that's the blind king.
Yeah. He sent for Bhishma, grandfather Bhishma, and Vidura. He wanted Sanjay to come too. So Sanjay was a pious assistant of the blind king.
Mystic yogi too.
Yeah, he could see into the future. He could see things that weren't in front of him. He was the one who was one of the speakers of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, he was reporting
question.
Yeah.
One of the great Krishna is coming, Dhritarashtra said. He's coming to our Hastinapur to talk about the war. He is a great man. He must be honored. We must please him in every way. His good wishes are very necessary for us now. Please make all arrangements to receive him properly. Make his journey pleasant throughout. If you please him, my son, he will be favorable to you. What does Bhishma say?
No, so it sounds like, hey, he's really, spiritually connected. Krishna's coming. He wants to.
He's a great man.
Serve him.
He's got great appreciation for Krishna, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bhishma and the others approved of his suggestions. Duryodhana, the son, made all arrangements. He reported to the king that all the arrangements had been made as per his wishes. The blind king told Vidura, Krishna will halt at the place called Kushatal tonight and arrive in Hastinapur tomorrow. You must personally supervise the reception that is to be given to the greatest of all men. I want to give him many gems and costly gifts. I want to give him a chariot and horses and 1,000 things. He deserves all this and much more. I'm eager to please him. Do you not approve of my idea?
My idea?
Idea?
I got what's our idea over there?
Vidura smiled to himself. He said, Krishna is the greatest person that has been born on this earth, or that will ever be born on this earth. I am amused to see the childish way in which you are talking. You ask me, do you think it is fitting that we should give gifts to Krishna? My dear brother, he deserves the entire world. That is not the point. I have been with you ever since we were children. I know you through and through. You cannot conceal anything from me. You are thinking of methods by which you can bribe that great man. How is it that you have become suddenly so very generous to Sri Krishna?
You are prepared.
You are prepared. to give so much to this man who is to talk to you and your son about the Pandavas. You have not the heart to part with even 5 villages as far as the Pandavas are concerned. You suddenly come out with suggestions that we should give him costly gems and horses and chariots and so many things to this messenger from those nephews of yours. You cannot win Krishna over to our side so easily as all that. His life is bound up in that of Arjuna. You think you can buy that great man by your cheap wealth? Do you Please do not insult him. I can tell you nothing, no amount of coaxing or pleading can part him from Arjuna and the Pandavas. If you are genuinely interested in pleasing Krishna, do what he asks you to do. Honor him by granting him his wish. He is coming here with the hope of making you and your son realize the horrors of war, of the injustice done to the Pandavas, of your avarice, of your heartlessness in making the kings of this entire world bleed for the sake of your selfishness. Krishna is coming to do good to the house of the Kurus, which is their family line. He wants peace. And if you agree to his proposals of peace and stop the preparations for war, your welcome will be real welcome to Krishna. I wonder if you will do it. I can only hope. You are a father to you were the father to those fatherless children. So the blind king was the stepfather when their father died. Is it after all so difficult to show some affection to these poor orphans?
Yeah. So in other words, what's happening here is that he's saying, "Oh blind king, you're talking about, oh, Krishna's coming and we should give him gems and we should give him horses and we should give him all these things. That's superficial, right? You've got all that stuff and you can easily give it. But what he's asking you for is a change of heart. What he's asking for you is to step up and do the right thing. He's asking for you to honor your nephews. That's why he's coming, you know? So you're really, it's superficial. Oh, I'm religious and I'm giving to God and but are you really willing to break your own attachments and to do the right thing? That's what will be meaningful here.
He's got a deep material motive. Shall I continue with this?
It's
nice
interesting.
to read this, isn't it?
Yeah, because now it's interesting. So in other words, what Vidura is saying is, you're talking about how you want to greet him. This is pointless. What you're suggesting is pointless. Now Duryodhana, the evil son of the blind king, is going to agree, but for a different reason. And you really get his character right here, just how narcissistic he is.
This is where the sun's at now.
Yeah. Okay.
Duryodhana was listening. He said, "What uncle says is right. Without a doubt, Krishna is fond of the Pandavas. Gifts should be given with discretion. There is a time for everything. Father, this idea of yours is stupid. Krishna is no fool. He will laugh at you. Also, he will think that we are frightened and that we are afraid and that we are trying to win his favor.
We've got to be strong. We got to show him that we're strong. It's
Yeah.
like that.
It does not become our dignity to cringe before him like this. It will also be an insult to Krishna. He is the greatest of the great. He should not be insulted by these paltry gifts, nor is our aim going to be served by him." See, that's what it really boils down to.
Yeah. He's not
We're
on
gonna
our
get
side.
what we want. Why are we going to even bother with this?
Right.
Let us honor him, but please abandon this foolish plan of yours. The world will laugh at you. Grandfather Bhishma said,
I mean, there's psychologically, there's so much that can be analyzed there,
Yeah.
Like even that last line, it's like he's concerned with how he's perceived. He's not concerned with what's right.
Yeah,
If it's the right thing to do, even if the world's laughing at you, you do it.
right. Grandfather said, whether he is honored or not is immaterial to Krishna. Even if anyone is foolish enough to insult him, he will not take it as an insult. He is too noble to notice these things. He is a truthful man. Nothing can be hidden from him. He is fighting for truth. He is not righting the wrongs done to the Pandavas. He will be most pleased if he hears words that are to his liking. He will be most pleased if he hears words that are to his liking. That is what you must do.
In other words, you can't just give him stuff. Krishna's God, right? He's not like just someone, oh, yeah, we gave him some gems and that changed him or affected him.
Right.
He wants to hear from you
Can't be
that you're going to do the
purchased.
right thing, right?
So now the son, the wicked-minded Duryodhan, said, "This grandfather of mine will always talk about the Pandavas." So he's
Yeah.
so angry at his grandfather.
So Bhishma, the most noble person, is speaking the truth. And he's like, you just like them and you don't like me. You know, he's like a child.
The grandfather of mine will always speak about the Pandavas. I have formed a plan by which I can make the Pandavas be my slaves. I will imprison this friend of the Pandavas, Krishna. If I do, if I do, what can they do? They will be helpless without Krishna. I think this plan is an excellent one, if only I can carry it out. Now, even the father, the blind king, was horrified by this suggestion. He said, "No, no, no. Please do not think like that. It is very wrong that you are planning what you are thinking of doing. Krishna is an ambassador. He is a relative and he is dear to all of us. It is a sin to even think of imprisoning him." Grandfather Bhishma was disgusted with young Duryodhan. He told Dhritarashtra, "This son of yours is losing his reason. He is just courting misfortune. He is full of sin, and so are his friends. He will always ignore the words which are spoken for his good. Now he is trying to imprison Krishna. This man does not please me. I do not want to listen to any more words from him." Bhishma got up from his seat and walked away without speaking in a word more.
Yeah. So it's, these characters and what they represent, Duryodhana representing just like the selfishness and childishness, petulance, right? The blind king, he's not as completely warped and narcissistic as this, but he's weak and attached and unwilling to stand up and do what's right.
Yeah.
You know, and Vidura, and for that matter, Bhishma, who stand, who stand for what's good and are willing and able to do it, and the strength of their character. These play out throughout the Mahabharata, and they become ways by which we can like look into our own hearts, and try to understand, am I living like a Bhishma? Am I living like a Duryodhana right now? Am I living like a
Sure. They set
a
up
blind
real
king?
they set up like real heroes, like dropped pins on my GPS of where I want to go, how I want to behave, who I want to become. I think it's important to have these as, especially raising kids. Like,
Yeah.
be like Fedora,
Be like
be
Vidura?
like Grandfather Bhishma,
like
do what's
Arjuna?
right.
You know who's another great character? Maybe we could just read a bit from her, because you get another character that just speaks such clear wisdom.
Draupadi?
Huh?
Draupadi?
No, not Draupadi in this case, but Gandhari,
The wife of the blind king.
the wife of the
Incredible.
blind king, right? She doesn't have his weaknesses, and even to her own son, who she loves, she can speak to him clearly about his own faults and give him really good advice. And you got that saved, Raghu? That'd be the next section, beginning with Dhritarashtra heard these. Yeah, see, yeah. What happens is Krishna comes, and he speaks in that assembly, and Duryodhana, the evil son, along with his cohorts, attempts to kidnap Krishna. Right there in public.
So stupid.
Yeah.
Let's catch Krishna. Lock him up.
And Krishna kind of like displays this mystic power. He shows this universal form and just kind of blows everyone's mind, and it makes Duryodhana's attempt to capture him just seem absolutely ridiculous, And then Krishna speaks his mind, and then it's beautiful, this is one of those scenes that just gives me chills, after displaying this and just kind of, completely thwarting Duryodhana's plan right in front of everyone. Then it says that Krishna walks out of there. But when he walks out, it says he takes the hands of two people. He takes in his hands the hands of Satyaki, his close friend and general, and Vidura. So in other words, to this Duryodhana, who's just like so evil, so selfish, so childish, so petulant, he doesn't even, he could have killed him, he could have done many things, but he just blew, he just blew him away with his mystic power. And then he takes the hand of Vidura and Satyaki, these two pure individuals, right? And holding their hands. This is Krishna's heart, right? This is, when you read Mahabharata, you see, ultimately it's all about love, and in the love that Krishna, because he loves the Pandavas so much, that's why he's against Duryodhana, and then he takes the hands of Vidura and Satyaki and he walks out of the assembly with them, and then you get the section that we're going to read right now, which speaks. You hear some of the words of Krishna, some of the words of warning from Krishna, and you hear Gandhari, the wife of the blind king, speak to her son, the evil Duryodhana.
Okay.
You ready?
Dhritarashtra heard these angry words of Krishna. He spoke to the wise and gentle Vidura. He said, "Go, my child, and bring Gandhari to the court.
That's his wife, the blind king's wife.
With her, I will try to coax my son. She may be able to point out the right path to him. If she can do it, we may be able to avert the great danger that is threatening us." Vidura went at once and brought the noble queen to the court, which was almost at once. Vidura went at once and brought the noble queen to the court, which is almost empty. Gandhari was wise and far-seeing. She knew the difference between right and wrong. She was a great woman. Dhritarashtra spoke to her. He said, "Gandhari, your son has gone too far in the path of sin. He does not pay heed to the words of anyone. He has left the court without any regard for anyone here." Gandhari heard the words of her husband. She said, "Vidura, bring my son to the court." Then she spoke to her husband. "This kingdom does not deserve to be ruled by a man who is full of avarice. My son Duryodhana is full of avarice. But my lord, you, more
What
than
is
my
avarice?
son." Mara?
Mara?
I believe it's greed, but I can get the correct
Yeah,
definition. in
greed,
just a
greed,
sec.
and
Yeah.
power, right? Need for power, greed for power and wealth, I think.
It's extreme greed for wealth or material gain.
There you go.
Avarice. We don't use that word that much. Let's bring it back.
Mhm.
Don't be
But
so
this is very interesting. Now,
avaricious.
Gandhari is saying that a leader can't be motivated by avarice, can't be motivated by an intense greed for material wealth and power, right?
My son Duryodhana is full of avarice, but my lord, you, more than my son, have to be censured for this unfortunate happening. It is in the extreme love you have for your son, you have been unheeding to the rules of conduct. Knowingly, willingly, you have accompanied him in the path of sin. He has been possessed by greed and pride. You cannot control him now. It is now too late. In spite of my warning words, you made him the ruler of the kingdom. You are now reaping the fruits of your own foolishness. You have not shown affection towards your kinsman. Which great king so far has shown differential treatment between two dear relatives? Only you.
So, yeah, in other words, you have this affection for your son that's causing you to make so many stupid mistakes. And you're not showing affection for the people. You're the leader of the people. You're supposed to have affection for the entire kingdom. So she's talking to her husband right now in a public arena and just like, with detachment, but with clarity, just kind of putting him in his place.
Only a wife can do.
Well, Vidura tried, yeah, but yeah.
Let's see if he listens. Duryodhana entered the court since he had been summoned by his mother. His eyes were still red and blazing with wrath. Gandhari spoke to him. She said, "My dear son, listen to my words. I want you to be happy. It is not easy to be the king of a great land like the Kuru land. You must be fit for it. A man who has these qualities, avarice and pride, cannot rule a kingdom. A man should have all his senses under control if he is to rule a kingdom. You are ill-fitted to be a king. You have not conquered self. You can conquer your. How can you conquer your enemies? You must consider your weaknesses as your foremost enemies."
This is so great, right?
Just,
I mean, just look what she
It's like,
said so
it's
far.
like we got to bring this into our political arena.
It's There's so many
Like, okay, you want
parallels
to be a
here with
king?
like
Let's conquer your senses in your mind.
there's yeah, and you know, look at her position, right? This is her son. She has, in one sense, she has more power if her son is the king. But she's looking at him saying, you don't have the qualities to be the king. Yudhishthira does. My nephew, your cousin, does. You know, but you don't have those qualities because you're selfish and you haven't conquered your senses. You know, so you can't care for people, and that's what the role calls for.
It is only after subduing them that you can think of subduing others, subduing your senses.
Yeah. So in other words, you see all these enemies, right? My cousins are my enemies. They're not your enemies.
Right.
Right. Your real enemies are your senses, you know, your mind and your senses, which are controlling you. Think about conquering them, not conquering Krishna, conquering the Pandavas.
Which is what, we're always coming to this conclusion on Wisdom of the Sages is turn all of your moral microscopes on yourself, work on yourself first, and then you become qualified to come to decisions. We tend to want to go out there and correct everybody else and overlook the deep self-work that has to be done first. So here, a perfect example. You're not qualified to be king because you never worked on yourself. You never took that time.
Yeah.
How can you possibly lead anybody else? It is only by subduing them that you can subdue others. Come to me and sit by my side. I'm your mother. I'm your greatest friend. A friend is one who is really interested in the welfare of his friend. I am fond of you. I brought you into this world. When you were born there were several evil omens. But I thought that all this was of no importance, since I could not dream that a son born of me would ever think of sin. Since I could not, evidently I was wrong. You seem to be the cause of a great calamity. Please stop it. Listen to the words of all of us. You think that Bhishma, Drona, and your Radheya, that's Karna, will be able to defeat the Pandavas? Do not be foolish. Think of Krishna and Arjuna. They are Nara and Narayan.
Narayanam namaskritya.
They have Dharma on their side. Where there is Dharma, there is victory. They are here to kill all of you. Listen to my words and be happy. Dhritarashtra again tried to join his wife's plea. Duryodhana was standing with a frown on his face.
Doesn't like to hear this. Bitter medicine, bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah. He was listening and at the same time not listening to his mother. Now without even a word, he turned his face away from all of them and walked out of the court.
Yeah.
When you cannot hear from people who are your well-wishers, that's the beginning of our fall down into material existence.
Yeah. So I just, you know, there's so much there when you know these characters, when you know Gandhari, you know, when you know Duryodhana, when you know the Blind King, that when I hear that and I hear, you know, you see through those words, there's so much. It's that paragraph that you just read is so rich with information. You know, like you take Gandhari, right? Because she stood for truth. Her attachments, you know, well, or unless you could flip it the other way. Because she was spiritually advanced, she was detached materially. So ideas like her son being king didn't affect her perception of truth. And she had the moral courage to stand up and speak it. But even when she spoke it, it wasn't through anger. It was with genuine affection for her son. You know, come sit here by me. I'm your friend. You know, I wish you well. When I'm speaking here, I have no ulterior agenda, you know, no ulterior motive except for your own good. You know, I want you to be happy, she said. And then she just said what had to be said, you know. Look at your character. You know, even you're my son. I never expected this of my son, but I see it in you, and I'm going to have to share this with you. If you're going to be happy, I'm going to have to speak the truth to you. You know, I'm going to have to tell you what you need to hear. So she did it to her husband, right? She spoke, you know, she put her husband kind of in his place. And then she did with her son as well. Now, he's so deeply attached, he's so deeply flawed in character that it doesn't matter his father tried to say, you know, half-heartedly, let's say, tried to correct him. His wise uncle tried to correct him. His gurus and elders like Bhishma, tried to correct him. His own mother tried to correct him. Krishna himself tried to correct him.
What's that called in a 12 steps thing? I don't know if it's a
Denial,
12-step thing per se, but all your friends, people that love you, get around you and say, hey,
intervention.
guy, an intervention. They had an intervention with Duryodhana.
But it
Listen,
didn't work.
It didn't work.
Yeah.
And therefore you can't heal unless you can unless there's some humility there where you can hear from others.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like a big part of the culture is being able to, like we were saying yesterday, have people, have peers, peer gurus, like people that you respect. They're your peers, but you respect the way they walk and talk and live in this world. And that we can inquire them, call them, reach out,
Have a Gandhari in your life.
have a Gandhari in your life that you can say, I'm struggling today. What do you think about this? There's a fork in my road of life. Should I go north or south? It seems like I should be going south. What do you think? No, I'll go north. They can call you out on your attachments and hopefully hear from you and they're not just going to pander, because this is what happens a lot of times. You're upset with somebody and you find a friend and you just start moaning. I'm just moaning about my life and where it's going there. And instead of like giving you firm advice and standing, they commiserate with you. Yeah, she is a jerk or he is a jerk.
And that's what you're looking for too, right?
They take your side. Yeah, and you don't deserve that type of treatment. Yeah, you don't deserve that type of treatment. But a real friend, and she was saying this, a real friend is one who's going to say, you know what? That was actually wrong of you. I think you should step back and reframe it.
Yeah. But with genuine affection.
Yeah, with genuine affection.
Yeah. We were mentioning earlier how Krishna more or less gave the same message, right? He was there and he stood in front of that assembly and said, the Pandavas are good. Yudhishthira is good. They've always lived to be righteous and good and to serve others with open, kind hearts. They should be
when
given
you
their
hate
kingdom back.
somebody and they say that, it makes you hate them more.
That's right. That's right. Well, that was so. That was, of course, Duryodhana, that extreme, right? Like, this is in the way of my plans. I hate, why doesn't everyone understand that I'm the greatest? 'Cause he was so deeply narcissistic and morally flawed. Now, the blind king wasn't as extremely narcissistic and morally flawed, but he was weak, weak to do what's right. So when he heard Krishna speaking, it had no appeal to him. And then you had, of course, Bhishma, who he heard the same words, and it was like nectar, right? Because he had he was purified of his attachments. He had no ulterior selfish motive. So when he heard truth, that truth, it was like nectar to his ears. But what you're saying, I think, is very connected to that we don't have any taste for hearing the truth, if we're not careful how we live, right? We have to, that piety that we need to be able to hear truth, that should be cultivated, carefully. And if we are weak in our desire to hear truth and the ability to be self-critical, self-reflective, and also, on the deeper spiritual practice side, if we find that when we hear the truth of these shastras, it's not really like, we kind of let that Bhagavatam just sit on the shelf forever. We lost our taste for hearing that. We have taste for hearing other things.
Yeah.
And that's a real barometer of our spiritual health. My desire to be
when we look at that Bhagavatam on the shelf and think, I need to clear my shelf off. What can I do with this big set of books?
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah, when it comes time to turn on some music, and you know what, I think I'd rather listen to this than that. When it comes to just that, how we fill up that time in our lives, what we have a taste for hearing and consuming, that's a really good barometer, of the nature of our spiritual health. But I find, and I think Bhakti-yogis commonly find, is just you just have to dive back in and crack it open a little bit, and then you begin to relish that taste again.
Sometimes you have to almost move away from it to really start appreciating it. And sometimes that can be incredibly painful as well. I also wanted to say that, to have a spiritual lens in this world the world is quite a fascinating place when you look at it through a spiritual lens. And people like Vidura and Bhishma, we're seeing when they see Krishna, they're just like they're so touched, they're so moved, they're so inspired. And when they hear about kidnapping Krishna, like Duryodhana wanted to kidnap Krishna, and so what Krishna does, which is amazing, is he shows his universal form to Duryodhana. And Duryodhana, here is Krishna doing the most magical thing in the world. He becomes everything at once, blows everybody's mind. But because Duryodhana has such a dark heart, he just doesn't even take it seriously. It's like Krishna's some mystic.
He's got some mystic power or
He's
whatever.
got some mystic, but big deal. It's like the world is such a magical place, but if you are trained in materialism, you don't even see it as magical. It just seems like it's just an ordinary place, big deal. And so as we move on our spiritual path, we learn to see the magic of spiritual life in everyday things, in plants, in trees, in the earth, in the sunset, in the sunrise, in the moon, in the stars, in people, in Krishna miracles. You start to see Krishna miracles everywhere. The sign of your spiritual intelligence when you see those Krishna miracles happening.
Would you like to end with just another short segment of Mahabharata?
Yeah. You want to read?
Yeah, and this has this is the kind of stuff that gets my hair standing on end. I don't know why.
If we had hair.
If we had hair, well, the hair on the back of the neck, that kind of hair.
Okay. I got my hair on my legs. It's like out of control right now.
But
Bing, 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 bing.
But this is where because a lot of times when it's like the wrongs are finally going to be righted and they're going to go and they're going to fight. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
When you really get into Mahabharata, it's just, and this is where Kunti speaks like that. The mother of the Pandavas, and she's speaking to Krishna. But this picks up right where Krishna just showed that universal form, blew everyone's mind, and then he walks out of the public assembly. I'll read that little part.
I mean, they're trying to kidnap and arrest Krishna.
Yeah. And so he effortlessly thwarts that. And then it says, the earth was shaken by an upheaval. There was a terrible earthquake. The oceans began to dry up. People were terrified. Taking pity on the earth, Krishna resumed his original form. So he just really created a scene. And they said he took Satyaki and Vidura by their hands and walked out of the hall. He took leave of all the rishis who had assembled there, all the yogis, right, all the sadhus. They went away too after the departure of Krishna. The entire assembly of kings and the others followed Krishna like smoke following in the wake of fire. Like Krishna just walks out and he has Vidura in one hand, Satyaki in the other hand, and all the sages are following behind. Kritavarma, who had just brought the army to the palace, Kritavarma had just brought the army to the palace gate. He brought the chariot in front of the assembly hall. So as Krishna's walking out, there's whole armies there. It's so cinematic, right? He saw Krishna coming out of it. Krishna would not speak a word to the many kings who followed him. He did not take leave of anyone. Kritavarma saw great sadness in the eyes of Krishna. Krishna heard the voice of Dhritarashtra. Now Dhritarashtra is saying one more time to Krishna. He says, Krishna, you have seen for yourself the power that I have over my son. You came here with the hope of bringing about peace between these two warring cousins. Please, do not have any bad feelings about me. I do not hate the Pandavas. You saw how I have tried to convince my sons. What can I do? Krishna heard his words. In the act of leaving, Krishna paused. With one foot on the footboard of the chariot, he turned his head and he said, I'm speaking to all the elders of the great assembly. You have all seen how much I've tried to avert this war. You saw what happened in court today. You all saw how Duryodhana left the court flaunting his pride in my face. Now Dhritarashtra too declares that he is powerless. I take leave of all of you. I'm going back to Yudhishthira. Right? So it's just like it's that war is going to come. Like the right. We tried to do it peacefully, and now the good is going to overcome the evil. In the way that you are only allowing your own destruction. Krishna's chariot moved fast. He was speeding towards the house of Vidura when he had to take the leave of Kunti, his aunt and the mother of the Pandavas. He reached the house soon, after greeting Kunti with his prostrations. So Krishna, when he sees Kunti, she's his elder, that's his aunt, he bows down, right? After greeting Kunti with his prostrations, Krishna told her about the happenings in the court. He said, "This forest of kings will soon be burnt by the fire called the Pandavas." He was silent for a while. Then he said, "I have to go now. Let me take leave of you. Please give me your message to the Pandavas. I will tell them how I found you and how eager you are to see them." So Krishna says, he becomes the messenger of Kunti. And tell me the message you would like me to share with your sons.
That's what they did before text messages. You got to give a message to somebody,
Yeah.
even if it's Krishna.
Yeah, but even all this is very deep because Krishna's God, but he's become the servant now. He wants to serve his devotees. And so Kunti said, "Tell my sons that they are all warriors, that they are the sons of Kunti, that there were heavenly voices heard when they were born, that I expect them to behave as warriors. Tell Draupadi that I am proud to have her as my daughter. They are all protected by you, Krishna. I have no worry. Go in peace, my child." I love that.
Boom.
Beautiful stuff on Bart.
That's the way I want to wake up in the morning. Hearing the words
There
of,
you go.
right? I don't want to see the exorcist face. I want to hear the words of Queen Kunti. I tell you, I just want to read the Mahabharata now.
Yeah.
If you haven't done it, do it. If you haven't read the Mahabharata, what are you doing? Take your spare time. You have lots of spare time out there. Put it in your car audio. Listen to it.
Two great versions,
whenever you
right?
want.
The Kamala Subramaniam, which I was just reading from, and the Krishna Dharma.
Kamala Subramaniam. That's one of our favorites too. It's slightly smaller than Krishna Dharma, but it's still, you can cry reading this one. This was my go-to before Krishna Dharmas. It's one I grew up with. Thanks, everybody. Hope you had a good show today. It's so important to wake up, listen to sacred literature, even if you're not listening to Wisdom of the Sages, but we highly encourage you to do it. Morning time is special. It's a morning time. The mind becomes really you can get access into the mind and the intelligence, and it's a great time to take care of spiritual life. This is called Brahma Muhurta. This time, hours before the sun rises, is when we become really sensitive to what we take in. Instead of trying to stay up late and do stuff, go to bed early, wake up early, hear all this stuff. Thanks for everybody for being around us. And remember, it's a community supported podcast. Support us any way you like. You can even buy one of these beautiful t-shirts on our wisdomofthesages.com, or you go to patreon.com/wisdomofthesages and leave some type of contribution. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Let us sing. Let us sing.